After David noticed that people had began coming out of the conference room, he decided to set aside what he wanted to tell Alicia. Currently, he wanted to know from his father what reason had caused them to be summoned over so urgently. Alicia on the other hand also took this chance to get away from David. To say the least, she was completely against the fact that her parents had arranged for her to be married by David. That was something that she was so much against. If she was given a chance to make a decision on the matter, then, he would not even make it to the list of the potential fiancés. It was not that David was a bad guy as far as her research was concerned, but nonetheless, there was still a fact that, she just did not feel any good vibes from him. So, since that was the case, then, there was no way that she was willing to spend her life together with him. As for Jack, that was someone that she had been observing for over 3 months, and to say the least, she was pleased by him and would not mind getting married to him. The only catch would be to deal with that fact that he was currently in another relationship that he was happy about. As she approached the entrance of the conference room, she rushed towards a lady that had purple hair and fiery red eyes. She was beautiful with a mature appearance, and despite having a daughter who was Alicia, she did not look older than 30 at all. Nonetheless, appearance could deceive a person as the lady was not simple. Among the group that was present here, she was amongst the ones that were considered to be strong. And, in the stronghold, strength was all that mattered, so, the level of respect that she was receiving was also high. Currently, she was considered the head of the family since her husband had gone out to deal with something important. "Mom, I have something important that I would like to talk to you about," Alicia said the moment that she got in front of her mother. The lady frowned as she looked at Alicia. Then, she shifted her gaze and looked towards the direction that David was, talking with his parents. She looked at Alicia's anxious expression and seemed to understand something. Shaking her head, she looked at Alicia and said, "It better not be about the marriage." Alicia looked at her mother and couldn't help but get displeased. Then, she said, "It is about the matter about marriage. I have already found what I was looking for." The lady seemed surprised by Alicia's words as she looked at Alicia with raised brows. Then, noticing that Alicia seemed to be serious about the matter and this was not a good place to talk about it, she said, "Let's get going first. We will talk after getting back home." Alicia saw that her mother was willing to listen to her, so, she excitedly led the way. And as she was leaving, David tried stopping her so that the two of them could talk, but she completely ignored his calls. Of course, Alicia's mother was helpless about this. So, she could only give David's parents an apologetic smile before following behind Alicia. After they left the biggest building in the stronghold, the two of them then boarded a black-tinted flying limousine that was waiting for them outside. And after they got inside, the driver immediately began driving towards their residence. Alicia was already impatient and looked at her mother and said, "Mother, I have already found what I was looking for." Alicia's mother, whose name was Ruth, looked at her daughter helplessly. Although she had initially planned that they were going to talk after they got back home, she decided against it. After all, the limousine that they were in was not only luxurious, but also soundproof. That implied that, the driver could not hear the conversation between them unless they allowed him. "What is it now? You should know that although it's true that you don't like David, but he is a good young man. More than that, he is strong and has a bright future. You have to know that we can never allow you to suffer in the future because of the person that you would have married." Ruth looked at her daughter and said in a low voice. Alicia rolled her eyes when she heard that. She looked at her mother and said, "Mother, you have to know that I'm not a child anymore. So, rather than saying that you care about my future, why not just say that you care much about the family's future?" Ruth wanted to retort that they were doing this for her, but the reality was that the main aim of all of this was that they were only thinking about the family in the most part of it. "Leaving that aside, I have already found the person that I want to be married to. You gave me 1 year, but I have only used just 3 months to get him." Seeing that her mother had remained silent, Alicia said with a bright smile on her face. Ruth raised her brows as she looked at Alicia with surprise in her eyes. Previously, when they gave her 1 year to look for a person that she believed was way better than David and she was willing to marry him, they were just saying it but they had never meant it at all. To them, they believed that there was no way that Alicia was going to get anyone that possessed a good background that was better than David's, unless she went to another big stronghold. But, that was completely impossible as even for her, it was not that easy to visit another big stronghold without proper reasons for doing so. So, when she heard that Alicia had found another person that was way better than David, she was of course a little surprised. But, she wasn't going to say anything about it for the moment. "Why don't you tell me about this person so that I can know if he is qualified to marry you or not?" Ruth asked curiously. Since Alicia already knew about the fact that the reason of the marriage with David was for the family, then, there was no way that she was going to talk about just anybody, right? Hee hee, I swear that you are going to like this one. Alicia said with a slight chuckle. When she noticed her mother's impatient look, she cleared her throat and said, "The one that I have found is incredible. Not only is he handsome, but he possesses incredible skills. More than that, he is so loyal." Ruth could only shake her head when she heard Alicia's words. To say the least, she was disappointed after she heard that. She had been expecting more than this. When she saw the disappointment in her mother's eyes, Alicia just smiled and continued, "Other than that, you know what? He is already a superhuman, although he is just 20 years old this year." Ruth's eyes widened as she looked at Alicia. She looked at her and was not sure about what she had just heard about. So, she said, "Can you repeat that again?" When she saw her mother's expression, Alicia felt a little triumphant. She was proud of Jack, although the two of them had parted ways in bad terms. She wasn't worried about the fact that the two of them would not be able to get married at all. Instead, she was happy that her mother had reacted in such a manner. "I said that he is only 20 this year, but he has already reached the superhuman level. Even Uncle James cannot guarantee that he can beat him," Alicia said with her chin raised in the air. Ruth was dumbfounded as she looked at her daughter speechlessly. There was nothing that she could say about the matter. And after finally calming down, she looked at Alicia and said with a voice that was laced with a hint of disappointment, "You know, you should be looking for lies that can at least make sense before trying to use them on me. I'm not a person that can be tricked just like that. Just tell me that you wanted to get more time to prepare for the marriage between the two of you." Alicia. She was completely dumbfounded when she heard her mother's words. That was it? That was the reason that she reacted like that? Alicia could not believe that her mother reacted like that simply because she didn't believe what she had said. "Mother, I'm telling the truth. You can even ask Uncle James and he will tell you that what I'm saying was not simply made up. Do you think that I'm a fool that would come over to lie to you with such a stupid lie? Trust your daughter, I can do better than that," Alicia said anxiously. She had to convince her mother about this so that she can get a chance of getting married by Jack. Otherwise, there was nothing that she could do about the matter and could only watch as Jack married Celine. That was something that she was not willing to see happen. When she looked at her daughter's anxious expression and the sincerity in her voice as she mentioned James, she couldn't help but raise her brows a little. James was someone that was never going to lie to her because he was loyal to her, not the family. For Alicia to mention him, that implied that what she had said might have some truth in them. So, she decided to give her a chance to convince her that what she had said was true. "Go ahead. After you tell me this, I'll be asking James about the matter as well," Ruth said as she motioned with her hand for Alicia to speak. Seeing that her mother had given her a chance, Alicia was relieved. In the next moment, she opened her mouth to tell her mother about all that was in her mind. Alicia went ahead and told her mother everything that she had experienced during the 3 months that she had been away from the stronghold. She told her about how she had come into contact with Jack, and what followed next. Initially, Ruth was not interested in the matter, considering that, going back to the normal countries, there were supposed to be only the ordinary people, and not ordinary humans with capabilities. But the more she listened, the more surprised she became. Initially, after hearing about Jack, before Alicia came to realize that he was actually a superhuman, even Ruth herself thought that Jack was actually a person with great potential. If it was true that he was actually that strong before undergoing any genetic modification, then, that implied that, if the modification was done, then, he was bound to be stronger. And of course, other than the background that they were looking for, Ruth and her husband were also looking for potential geniuses that they could nurture. The reason behind this was that, if there was a person that was stronger in their family, that would imply that, the power of the family would be increased. Additionally, they had to also think about the future generations. By getting someone who could be loyal to the family, and be strong as well, then, the future of the family would be guaranteed. And, Ruth knew that, the best way to tie a person like Jack into the family was not just about providing the resources, but making sure that he was really bound to the family. And of course, the best way will be by making sure that he was married to someone in the family. And if it was true that he possessed great potential, then, Alicia would have been the best person that Jack would have to marry. But anyway, that was just an if, and not the reality. When she heard what Alicia had done during the time that she was there, Ruth frowned. She did not expect that her daughter had decided to utilize her abilities while there. After all, that was something that was prohibited, even though it was not closely monitored. Luckily, there was nobody that was able to find her using the ability. Otherwise, if they found out that there was someone that possessed abilities, went back to the normal people, and began abusing their abilities that they possessed, then there would be consequences. Then, when she was told about the period that Jack nearly killed Alicia, Ruth's expression suddenly became icy. Currently, Ruth only had a single child, and that was Alicia. And she always doted on her, and would not allow anybody to harm her. And that was the exact reason as to why she had allowed James to take care of her, ever since she was young. She trusted James, and that was the reason that why she had allowed him to always be close to her. Finally, she was relieved after she realized that Jack did not do anything to Alicia due to the interference by James. But nonetheless, the impression that had been formed by Jack through what she had been told by Alicia had already gone slightly down. Even though it had not gone to the negative side, but it was still low. "Mother, what do you think? Don't you think that he is the right person that is supposed to marry me? I don't think that there is any other youth out there that is as capable as him," Alicia asked as she looked at her mother excitedly. Ruth remained silent as she began pondering on the matter. There was no way that she was going to make a simple decision even before she made any investigations on the matter. Even though it was true that she believed that what Alicia had said was the truth, but she was a person who always made sure that the information that she had received was exactly how it was supposed to be. So, before asking James about his side of the story, as well as sending someone to go over and investigate Jack, then, there was no way that she was going to decide on the matter. But not deciding on the matter did not imply that she was not possessing several questions that she really needed to ask Alicia about. "To say the truth, I am impressed as well. If what you have said is actually true, then, this Jack possesses an incredible background. But nonetheless, there are some things that I don't understand," Ruth said with a frown on her face. "What is it, Mom?" Alicia asked. The excitement on her face had also reduced. Currently, she was waiting for her mother's decision, before finally concluding and what she was supposed to do with Celine. "You clearly stated that this Jack is already in a relationship with another person. And if that is the case, then, why are you so much into him? Do you believe that just because you love him, he is going to love you back?" Ruth asked with a serious expression on her face. Alicia was initially surprised by the question. But, in the next moment, she replied confidently. "What does it matter that he is currently in a relationship? The girl that he is in a relationship with is just an ordinary person. Her parents are normal people without any abilities, and so, I do believe that it will not be a problem to separate the two of them. More than this, there is also a fact that a person like Jack possesses an incredible background. So, as long as we manage to convince his parents that the two of us are actually supposed to get married and form an alliance, then, I do believe that they will not hesitate. After all, I am way better than a lady that possesses only an ordinary background." Ruth had already thought about this, but there was only one thing that was troubling her at the moment. It doesn't matter if it is true that his background is going to agree or not. But, during the last meeting between the two of you, he claimed that he was going to make sure that you paid for it. Do you believe that he is going to agree to marry you? Alicia remained silent as she knew that what her mother was saying was true. After all, the anger that was within Jack's eyes at that time was frightening her. Additionally, even though it was true that Jack had backed down at that time, that did not imply that he had decided to let go of the hatred. Previously, she had believed that she was going to be capable of making him love her, instead of hating her. But, it was only now that she realized how naive she was. It seemed that her mind was not working at that time. "I guess that the only method that I can use this time is to make sure that I try and gain his love. As long as he loves me, then, there will be no problem about the relationship between the two of them," Alicia responded. "You know, you're talking as if the matter of falling in love is something that can happen with just a single snap of a finger. It is completely different. Unlike you who has already fallen in love with him, he is different. He is someone that hates you now. So, for you to be able to convert that hatred into love, it is going to take a lot of work," Ruth said as she looked at the blurring buildings as the limousine moved at an incredible speed. Alicia pursed her lips when she heard that. She knew that what her mother had said was right, but she didn't have any other choice. To her, it was way better if she was going to try to convert the hatred into love, rather than getting married to David. She didn't possess any feeling towards David, so, no matter what, she would rather get married to a dog, rather than marrying David. As for the reason behind that, even she herself did not understand, other than the fact that David never gave her a good vibe. "I don't know. But I do believe that we can try. No matter what, I have to try and make sure that I marry Jack. Other than him, I don't believe that there is any other man that is as capable as he is. So, mother, you have to help me, Alicia said with a pleading gaze. Ruth looked at her daughter helplessly. Even she herself thought that it was true that a person possessing Jack's background was actually way better than David. But she knew how difficult it was going to be able to convince the background that Jack belonged to agree to the marriage. Moreover, currently, they had not investigated about Jack. So, there was no way that she was going to promise that Jack was going to marry her daughter. Perhaps, Jack's own background had already arranged for his marriage, and the only reason as to why he was out there was to give him a chance to play as much as possible before going back to the stronghold that he belonged to, so that he could settle down. That is going to be something that will take us a lot of time to be able to know what step we are supposed to take. After all, we have to do an investigation first, Ruth said after thinking for a while. How long exactly? Alicia asked nervously. It should take us about a month or two. It's not easy to investigate a person from another stronghold. Had it been that Jack's background is present inside Devon's stronghold, then it would not have been a problem for us to get the information that we need, Ruth replied. A month? But I cannot continue staying here knowing that the two of them are together. We have to do something about it, Alicia said anxiously. A month? But I cannot continue staying here knowing that the two of them are together. We have to do something about it, Alicia said anxiously. Ruth knew what Alicia was worried about, but in the end, although she doted on her daughter much, she knew that this time they had to play low. You have to remain calm, and if you want Jack, make sure that you don't do anything about that girl. You already know that, previously, even though you simply controlled her, you ended up making him hate you. So, if you do anything more, then, you might as well turn him into an enemy of life and death, Ruth explained. Alicia looked at her mother, not knowing what to do, but she knew that what her mother had said was true. But she didn't want to continue staying here, while knowing that Jack was spending time together with Celine. In her heart, she felt that she was the one that was supposed to spend time together with Jack, and not Celine. After all, comparing the two of them, even though it was true that Celine exceeded her in terms of appearance, in terms of background, as well as personal abilities, she was way higher than her. If you want to get married to him, then you will have to stay here, and make sure that you don't do anything stupid. If you end up making him continue hating you, then he might as well decide that he is not going to marry you, even if he has to go against the background that he possesses, Ruth warned. Alicia remained silent. Currently, she had to select between comfort for now, or marriage that was supposed to happen later on. So, after a long time of debating, she finally decided against what she was planning to do. But she had decided that, if time went by, and her mother had not done anything, then she was going to do what she had planned before. After all, the more time that she gave to Jack and Celine to continue being together, then, the better the bond between the two of them. That way, it was going to be a difficult task for her to be able to make Jack love her. Okay. I will be waiting. But you have to hurry things up. I don't think I can continue being patient. And, can you cancel the engagement between me and David? I don't want to be continuously called his fiancé, Alicia stated. Ruth shook her head in response. Then, she said, the engagement between you and David cannot be broken as of now. Unless we confirm that you and Jack can actually get married, there is no way that we are going to break the bond between the two of you. So, what you have to look out for is that you are going to make sure that the two of you don't fall out for now. Alicia was of course displeased. It seemed that there was no way that she was going to change her mother, who only thought about the family the most. So, she decided to bear with the matter for now, hoping that her mother would be able to complete the investigations and negotiations as soon as possible. Back in Azima, during the past 5 days, Jack had been spending a lot of time together with Celine. Even though it was true that he had been planning to do a lot of investigation, he decided to set the matter aside first, and make sure that the gap that had opened up between the two of them was closed. They went on several dates, spending much time together. Additionally, Jack also attempted several times to try and help Celine in making sure that the serum that she had taken was more effective. Of course, Jack had not forgotten about making sure that he kept an eye on Alicia. Even though he had realized that she had left the country, he was making sure that the moment that she arrived here, then, he would be notified. This was just one of the precautions that he had decided to take, before he managed to upgrade his authority to the 2nd level. Only then would he be assured that Celine would not be controlled by anyone. While all of this was going on, he had also made sure that all the companies that were supposed to dominate their industries had increased the speed at which they were doing things. The Rose Entertainment Company had also increased the rate at which they were poaching stars from different companies. And, the majority of the entertainment companies knowing that, the Rose Entertainment Company had decided on making sure that it dominated the entire industry, they agreed to sell the companies. At the end of the day, even though it was true that they were no longer going to participate in the entertainment industry, that didn't imply that they were going to suffer a loss. The amount of money that was being offered by the Rose Entertainment Company to purchase their own companies was way higher than the market price. Well, that was 5 days and backwards. But, after the incidents, Jack had changed. Now, to purchase a company, Jack had decided that he was going to offer them a price that was way higher than the market price, and other than that, they were going to be given the profits that they would have earned during the 1 year that they would have been running the company. They were going to be given the maximum profits that the company has ever achieved for a certain year. And due to this, many companies had already agreed to be bought by the Rose Entertainment Company. After all, it was not easy to get so much free money. Considering that the majority of the entertainment companies were owned by several shareholders, with the majority of them agreeing to sell the company, then, even those that held the majority of the shares did not have a choice but to agree. At the end of the day, the majority of the people that had decided to become shareholders only did so because they wanted profits. And, being given profits for a whole year, without doing or risking anything, that was not something that many people could easily give up on. As for the car industry, Jack had also applied the same method. Of course, he was never going to use any underhanded tricks to deal with the competitors. Instead, he was always straightforward. But nonetheless, that did not imply that the others were going to think the same way as him. And, due to the popularity of the cars that he had released into the market, many of the car producers had decided to look for the method of production of these cars. They wanted the technology. But the technology was protected, in that, no matter how much they tried, they did not manage to find any clues about the level of technology that was being used. So, as usual, they decided to use several other means, just to try and get that technology. This was to be expected. After all, many of the car producers had been into the market for several decades. But now, a company that appeared just out of nowhere was about to overtake them. So, they were overcome by despair, and were no longer willing to lose. But, all those that decided to use any underhanded tricks, Jack also retaliated. Of course, the thing that he did the most was investigating the dark secrets that these producers were keeping, and revealing them to the public. In this way, the losses that particular company would be suffering would increase by several times. Moreover, currently, the prices of the shares of these companies in the stock market had all dropped. So, with these dark secrets revealed, then, the prices of the shares also dropped further. Currently, the 5 companies that had been decided on by Jack to dominate the entire industry were Good Vision Security Limited, GVSL, Glaze Hotel, Grocery Department, The Future Techs, and finally, the Rose Entertainment Company. The grocery department had already been progressing well, and Grace was able to dominate all the 4 provinces, leaving behind only the central province. She had been ruthless in the way that she was handling things, and, due to the capabilities that she possessed, she was able to easily conquer all the cities that the grocery department had spread to. When she was informed that the grocery department was supposed to dominate the entire country, she no longer decided to spend a lot of time in a single city. Instead, she had decided that she was going to introduce the grocery department in different cities in different provinces at the same time. More than that, she had also gotten the assistance of Jack through the purchases of several big companies that were involved in foodstuffs. And, all of them were supposed to be merged into World Foods later on after Jack had received his first income reward. As for the Good Vision Security Limited, due to the fact that the security guards that belonged to GVSL were both strong and disciplined, the majority of companies, residences, communities, and other institutions all decided on hiring GVSL. But of course, Jack had also decided to purchase several companies during the past 5 days. This way, he was going to be able to speed up the process of dominating the entire security industry. The Glaze Hotel had already managed to dominate the entire hotel sector, so it was not going to be a problem, as long as he managed to dominate the remaining 4 industries. Jack, I want to go out with Bella. We are going back to the majestic and swift horse racing tracks. Celine said to Jack the moment that he appeared in the living room for breakfast. Jack, I want to go out with Bella. We are going back to the majestic and swift horse racing tracks. Celine said to Jack the moment that he appeared in the living room for breakfast. There should be no problem about that, Do you want me to accompany you? Jack asked as he took a seat on the dining table. Celine rolled her eyes at him, as she asked, "Why are you asking the obvious? You're supposed to accompany me, of course. Otherwise, do you believe that the people of that majestic and swift horse racing tracks are going to give me a chance to enjoy myself? Additionally, Bella is so good, so, with me going there is bound to be a person that will cause me trouble." Jack took the cutlery and began eating the pancakes that had been spread with honey on his plate. Other than the pancakes, there were several fruits, eggs, and other delicacies. And more than that, there was also milk coffee. All of these had been prepared by Celine. Since this was a meal that was prepared by his darling, then, Jack enjoyed the food. Celine had also joined him, so, the two of them were eating together, and feeding each other from time to time. "I can simply tell the manager to prepare everything for you. If you want, I can tell him to chase everyone that is present in the horse racing tracks so that you can use them alone. That way, I'm sure that nobody will be able to cause you trouble," Jack said as he continued eating. Celine pursed her lips as she looked at Jack. After swallowing the food that was in her mouth, with a frown on her face, she said, "That won't do. You decided to buy the horse racing tracks, so that implies that the business has to be run. I will not allow myself to be the cause of the losses that you will get due to chasing the people out of there." Jack simply chuckled in response. There was no way that he was going to tell Celine about the system. After all, if she knew that, even if he earned half of the profits that the horse racing tracks usually gave, the profit will be multiplied by 100 times, making him earn even more. "Okay. I guess we will go together." Jack had no intention of letting Celine go. He had decided that the two of them were going to spend as much time as possible together, to ensure that there would be no incidents where Celine would be doubting the relationship between the two of them. Of course, Caitlin had already told Jack about Celine's insecurities. That was why Jack had decided to spend as much time as possible together with Celine. He had to ensure that Celine knew that, no matter what, he loved her, and he did not care about all those things that she was thinking about. If he was scared of trouble, then he would have been running away from them. But, no matter what kind of trouble it was, as long as it provoked him, then he would have no choice but to face off against it. It would be either he dealt with it, or he was dealt with. But of course, he possessed confidence that he was capable of dealing with almost every kind of trouble that he would encounter. The current problem that he was facing was not just about the strongholds, but also the fact that Celine was currently weak. So, as long as he managed to reach the threshold that he had been given by the system to upgrade his level to the second level, then, Celine would receive the protection of the system from mind control abilities. After the two of them completed their breakfast, they left the villa, and went to the majestic and swift horse racing tracks. There, they spent some time together, racing against each other. They only left during the time that they had to take a lunch break, of course, even though the two of them could continue after taking the body strengthening solution. But, Jack did not allow that to happen. He wanted Celine to continue resting, and continue living her life normally, rather than overexerting herself. Even though it was true that by using the body strengthening solution, they will be able to recover the energy that they would have lost, but mental strength was completely different. That was something that could only be recovered after some time of rest. So, Jack always made sure that Celine took enough rest. Additionally, he had also realized that Celine was getting stronger as days went by. All of this happened ever since the time that he had injected the serum into her bloodstream. Her improvements were so drastic that even Jack himself was astonished. Even though he was told by Maxwell that the serum that he had been given was actually the only one in the entire Shadow organization of such great quality, he had never expected that the results would be this amazing. Unlike the body strengthening solution that could only increase a person's capabilities by 2 levels, the serum that he had been given by Maxwell was able to improve Celine's capabilities by 4 levels. Additionally, Jack had also realized that, currently, Celine was continuously getting stronger. With her already mastering the basics of combats, they had already entered the intermediate level in training. And, Jack had realized that, she became stronger the more she trained. So, just like always when it came to training, he was never lenient, as that was not only what the serum required, but that was just how she wanted Jack to be during the training. From the system, Jack had already known that the effectiveness of the serum was going to end by the time that Celine's capabilities would have improved by 5 levels. At that time, she would be just as strong as Denali was. Of course, Jack was also excited about this. After all, by Celine reaching the 9th level, then, that implied that there was only 1 level for her to reach the 10th level. And after that, it would only be a matter of breaking the genetic lock before she became a superhuman. Even though he had already been informed that it was quite difficult for a person to break the genetic lock, Jack was not worried about that. After all, with the system, he was able to break the genetic lock. Additionally, he had also realized that, if the system was going to influence Celine after he upgraded his authority to the second level, then, that implied that, perhaps the system could enable Celine to reach the superhuman level as well. After lunch, the two of them continued enjoying their time together. It was autumn, and the clouds were in the sky, blocking the sun. For that reason, the two of them did not have any trouble enjoying themselves even though it was afternoon. Additionally, the weather was quite cool. Although some trees had already begun shedding their leaves in preparations to welcome the winter, the mixture of yellow, brown and green leaves gave off a beautiful scene. In the horse racing tracks that had plants almost everywhere, this was actually such a good place to relax. And of course, while here, what Celine had predicted happened, but Jack simply took care of everything by chasing those troublemakers from here. In fact, he banned them from ever using the horse racing tracks. While Jack was enjoying his time together with Celine, he did not know that his series of actions had caused disturbances in several areas around the world. Even though it was not intentional, but he had actually changed the flow of things. Inside the Panthers organization, a meeting was ongoing. Antonio was seated at the head of the table, while looking at the remaining guardians of the organization that were still alive. "We have to send someone else to go and look for that Nathan. Things are getting out of hand. I'm sure that after we get Nathan, and get what we want from him, then, it will not be a problem dealing with the butterfly organization at all," Antonio said coldly. It was true that Antonio had been the most angered at the fact that Eric had died. After all, Eric was from his faction, and with his death, not only did the organization lose, but the strength that he possessed also decreased. For that reason, the competition that he was facing from the other people that wanted to take the position that he was holding increased. Moreover, he was already being suspected to be the one that had sent Eric over. Of course, he had already communicated with the leader of the organization, and informed him that he had sent Eric over simply because he wanted to assist on the matter concerning what they had found 5 years ago. For that reason, the leader of the organization spared him, but he gave him until the end of this year to make sure that he found what they were looking for. After all, since he had already made a move, then, he had to complete it. As for the butterfly organization that was suspected to be involved in the murder of Eric, they were still in discussion about the compensation. Of course, the butterfly organization had claimed that they had tried communicating with Samantha several times, but no matter how much they tried, they couldn't reach her. Butterfly organization had realized that the voice of the person who was speaking at that time might actually not belong to Samantha, but during the time that all of this happened, she was the only person that was out of the organization. Additionally, she was the only member of the butterfly organization that possessed the strength to deal with Eric. Of course, they all assumed that she had dealt with Eric by sneak attacking him. But of course, none of the two organizations had removed the probability of the other organizations present in the stronghold being involved in the matter, just to ensure that the two organizations fought against each other. After all, if the two organizations fought, then, the other organizations were the ones that were going to benefit. Vice Supreme Leader, since you have already been given the authority by the Supreme Leader to take action, then, I don't think that we need to continue hiding anymore. A man stood up and looked at Antonio as he said those words. Vice Supreme Leader, since you have already been given the authority by the Supreme Leader to take action, then, I don't think that we need to continue hiding anymore. A man stood up and looked at Antonio as he said those words. Antonio remained silent, but he was not against what the man had said. In fact, that was what he was just thinking about. In fact, had it not been for the fact that he was required to be in the stronghold, then, he would have definitely made a move by himself. "Can you please explain yourself?" Antonio asked calmly. Even though he was not showing it much on his face, the anger that was boiling beneath that calm facade that he was putting on could scare someone to death. "What I'm trying to imply is this: since the Supreme Leader has already given us the authority to do as we want, as long as we give the results, then I don't think that we need to continue hiding in the shadows anymore," the man began explaining. "Since it is already assured that as long as we get what we want, then, whatever was found 5 years ago is going to be very useful, and it is going to enable us to conquer the entire stronghold. With it, even if other organizations in the stronghold come to know that we possess something like that, then, it will already be too late because we will be able to utilize it. As for the other strongholds that are usually governing us, it's going to take some time before they come over. And, since we are deciding to do this with full force, then, I do believe that we are going to complete the task as soon as possible. And by the time that those from the bigger strongholds come over, we will have already hidden the evidence of our involvement in anything illegal. I'm not trying to say that our actions are illegal, but I do have to take precautions that we might do something that is completely against the code that we have been given. So, by the time that they arrive here, if we have committed anything that is considered wrong by those from the biggest strongholds, then, we will have already gotten the chance to hide it. Antonio was also thinking the same thing. As for the other three, they did not have any objections about what this man had said. After all, they all had a single thought, and that was, to get what they wanted as soon as possible. Not only was this a task that had been given to them now by the supreme leader, but, there was also the fact that, after they got it, then, Antonio was going to maintain his position, stabilizing it without having any fear of being threatened. At that time, with Antonio finally grasping all the authority in the organization, only lower than the supreme leader, then, they themselves would actually benefit from it. After all, there was no way that they were going to be together with a person if they were not going to gain any benefits from it. I get the point. But I do believe that all of you know that I cannot leave this place, and since that's the case, then, I will have to trust that the four of you are going to take care of the matter without need of my supervision. The last time, there was a problem by the fact that, someone from the butterfly organization was involved. For that reason, Eric lost his life. But, this time, we are not going to send a single person, but instead, all of you are going out. With the four of you together, I do believe that you will not fail the mission. Additionally, even if the other organizations come to realize that 4 of our guardians have gone out, by the time that they react, you will have already completed the mission. I don't want to believe that the 4 of you can actually have a lot of difficulty taking care of a single person. Additionally, it is only a person with some wealth in the normal countries, and not possessing any authority in the strongholds, Antonio instructed. Everyone present at the table nodded their heads. That was what everybody was thinking. They believed that by going out full force, they will be able to catch everyone by surprise, and complete what they wanted to do without any hitches. As for the people from the other factions in our organization, don't worry about them. You guys will be leaving here stealthily, ensuring that none of them notices you. By the time that they notice that you have gone out, and try coming after you so that they can know what we are planning, you will have already gone. Moreover, they are not sure about where you guys will be heading to. So, they will be searching blindly, and that will be giving us enough time to complete the mission. Antonio explained once again. He already knew that with the presence of the other factions in the organization, and due to the fact that he had already alarmed them with the death of Eric, then, they were all keeping an eye on him and the people around him. But, it was not like they were keeping an eye on them 24 hours a day. So, by the time they realized that the 4 people had already left the stronghold, it would be too late. Additionally, Antonio was not willing to send them out there without anything that they would depend on in case things went wrong. He took out a crystal that was dark in color. Even though there was hesitation on his face, the determination that was in his eyes overwhelmed the hesitation. Gasp! Everyone present was surprised when they saw the black crystal. They knew what it was the mirage crystal. They did not know the concept behind that crystal, but they knew that, once it was activated, it was capable of creating illusions. They knew that this was the award that Antonio had been given by the Supreme Leader after he had ascended the position of the Vice Supreme Leader. He had always been keeping this because it was considered as a life-saving token that could be used during battles. But now, Antonio taking it out implied that he was willing to give it to them so that they could use it during the mission. This was something that all of them were actually drooling for. Had it not been for the fact that there was a great difference in terms of strength between them, and the good relationship that they shared, then, some of them would definitely not mind having some plans on how to acquire it. I do believe that all of you know what this mirage crystal can do. Additionally, you also know about the value of this crystal. This is something that I have been keeping for several years now ever since I have taken over the position of the Vice Supreme Leader of the organization. As all of you have already known about the details of this crystal, you know that it is something that can save a person's life, even at my level, to actually be able to avoid death even when facing a superhuman. But of course, even though it is something that can save a life, it has its own limitations. It can only be used 3 times, and until now, I have not used it at all. But for this mission, I hope that once you go out, you will try as much as possible to ensure that you don't risk anything, so that you can continue maintain this mirage crystal. Every single use of this mirage crystal is precious, and as I have just said, Although I am giving it to you, that does not imply that you will have to continuously use it. This is just another solution, or plan B after everything else that you have tried has failed. After saying those words, Antonio looked at the crystal once again, before placing it on top of the table. He knew that, the moment that this crystal was taken out of the stronghold, then, he wasn't sure if it was going to be brought back or not. Of course, even though it was true that he trusted these 4 people, he was still worried. After all, humans could always change their minds at any moment. So, he was not sure if any one of them was going to change their mind during the time that they were out, and decide to betray him. But still, he did not have any other choice. It was a matter of gambling now. If the plan succeeded, then, he was sure that the Supreme Leader might actually reward him with an even more precious gift. After all, what he would have done would have definitely earned the Panthers organization something bigger than this. And, once they managed to control the entire stronghold, then, it would not be a problem for them to get as many resources as they want. After a moment of silence, Antonio looked at the group of 4 and rolled the crystal towards them on top of the table. He then said, "With this mirage crystal, I do believe that you will not fail this mission. Because if you do, then, you will have to look for a way that you are going to compensate me." "Yes, Vice Supreme Leader. We will make sure that we succeed in this mission." Everyone present in the room got on their feet, and said with resolution in their voices. "Yes, Vice Supreme Leader. We will make sure that we succeed in this mission." Everyone present in the room got on their feet, and said with resolution in their voices. After they said that, one of them took the mirage crystal and the group left the room that they were discussing in. This room was of course under Antonio Phillips. After everyone left, Antonio leaned back on the seat that he was seated on. He was currently distressed. After all, everything had been going against him ever since the time that he realized that he was going to be capable of cementing his position in the organization. At that time, there was Yona, the guy that he had sent over first to go and bring nothing back, before he was killed, who had come to inform him of a piece of information that he had been looking for. He was also the one that had informed him about Nathan, and due to that, he had thought that it was only right that Yona went ahead and brought Nathan to the stronghold. By doing that, he will be promoted and will be given much more resources to improve himself. But in the end, Antonio did not know what happened. Nonetheless, Yona had died during the trip that he had gone out. It was supposed to be an easy task, but in the end, it ended up costing his life. Even though it was true that Yona was not that important in the organization, but still, Antonio cared a little about him. After all, he had done something, even though it was just by coincidence, it was something that had helped him a lot. And when Eric went over, he ended up dying, and, this time, they came to know that the reason for that was simply because of a guardian of the butterfly organization. Of course, Antonio did not believe that a guardian of the butterfly organization was actually capable of dealing with Eric. There had to be something that was being hidden, trying to cause them trouble. "I guess, I will have to hold on until we finally find what we are looking for. When that time reaches, I'm pretty sure that we will be able to dominate the entire stronghold. And with that, the sacrifice of a mirage crystal will be nothing. I'm sure that I will be able to get even more in the future. As for what is going on now, I just hope that bad luck does not come our way once again. We have already lost twice, and I'm not ready to lose anything else. After all, if they lose this time, then, the mirage crystal that I have been given by the Supreme Leader will be gone as well," Antonio thought to himself. At this moment, the door opened and Patricia walked in. When he saw her, Antonio finally stopped thinking about the matter. As a vice supreme leader of the entire organization, he had to ensure that he kept up an authoritative front. In that way, he would be able to command respect. "It seems that you are stressed up about something," Patricia said as she went ahead and sat beside him. "Yeah. I don't know why, but I have been feeling that everything that I do is going to fail. And, with every failure, then, there are going to be numerous losses that are going to continuously shake my position in the organization," Antonio replied. "That is quite normal, you know. This is life, and we have to experience trouble every now and again. We are not the only ones present in the entire world, and we cannot expect everything to always go our way," Patricia said. Antonio remained silent as he looked at Patricia. He was slightly surprised that she was actually going to try and talk to him about something like this. After all, normally she would simply come over, present the report that she has, and after that, leave. But now, it seemed that she wanted to have a chat with him. Either way, Antonio looked at Patricia and said seriously, "You should know that my response until now has not changed. This is not something that can be changed even if we have a long conversation, and chat like we used to do several years ago. Patricia rolled her eyes at Antonio when she heard that. The two of them had actually joined the organization together, and they have been working hard to be able to reach the positions that they were holding now. But of course, there was always someone who was better, either in terms of luck or abilities. And Antonio was able to surpass her in terms of luck and capabilities. That was the reason he had been selected to take over the position of the vice supreme leader of the organization. As for her, with the abilities that she possessed, she was only able to take over the position that she currently holds after a long period of hard work. In fact, had it not been for the help that she had received from Antonio, then she would not actually be capable of standing tall in the organization. Even though she was considered a logistics member of the organization, she played an important role as well, with the capabilities of monitoring the life force of all the members of the organization. In case there was an accident anywhere, then she was required to report as soon as possible. And if she delayed, then she might actually cause the entire organization to suffer innumerable losses. So, the role that she played in the organization was not to be underestimated at all. More than that, she also possessed an ability that enabled her to do work well. She was capable of knowing the cause of the death of a member of the organization as long as they had interacted before. That was why the supreme leader of the organization always valued her as well. And during the time that she had been recommended by Antonio, the supreme leader had actually given her a lot of resources that enabled her to reach the same level in terms of strength as the guardians of the organization, at level 8. I'm not here to talk about that, and please, if you don't want to continue listening to me, you can just go ahead and tell me so. The only reason as to why I came over is to simply know how you are doing. After all, you have been stressed up recently, and the pressure that you are facing from the opposing factions has also increased. Patricia said in a dissatisfied voice. Antonio simply chuckled at that. It seemed that he had not spent a lot of time with Patricia, that he had actually forgotten about how she usually behaved. I'm sorry about that. But, as of late, I have been much involved in the matter of the organization, and trying to look for ways to cement my position here. But, for that reason, I have not been able to spend time with you like we always did during the years way back. Antonio said with a bitter smile on his face. Sigh. Patricia sighed. She has never blamed Antonio about the matter. She knew that, currently, Antonio was holding a very important position in the organization, and was required to be busy almost every time. It was just that, she was also feeling uncomfortable by the fact that there was a gap that was forming between the two of them. Before they came to hold the positions that they currently were, they used to spend a lot of time together. In fact, it had begun long time ago before they came to know about the existence of the strongholds. They had gone to the same school, they lived in the same neighborhood, and their parents were also friends. At school, by coincidence or not, they were actually classmates. This went on until high school, when a tragedy suddenly occurred. At that time, they had gone to school. But, suddenly, their community was attacked by terrorists who went ahead and killed several people. In the end, amongst the people that had died, their parents were also victims. Of course, this had completely devastated them. With nobody to take care of them anymore, they could only depend on themselves. And by a lucky encounter, they were able to come across a person that had come over trying to scout people that could be recruited into their organizations. Consequently, that person took them to the stronghold, and told them that, if they performed well, then, they would be given resources. They were not sure about what that person had seen in them, but, nonetheless, they always worked hard, and, they were promoted. It was just that, their benefactor had passed away a few years after he had brought them over to the stronghold. He was killed by the invaders. As for his last wish, it was that, they were not supposed to take revenge on those that had killed their parents. After all, the people themselves had already been killed, but, since that was the case, Antonio and Patricia were actually planning on dealing with their families. Their benefactor said that, the humans were currently in peril. So, no matter what, they had to ensure that the number of deaths was as low as possible. Otherwise, if the people from the stronghold began going back to the normal countries and killing the other people, then, there was no doubt that if the strongholds were defeated, then, there would be no chance of the survival of the humankind. Being reminded of the time that they had spent together, Antonio finally relaxed his body a little. Forgetting about his position, he began chatting with Patricia, laughing from time to time. With that, the loads of stress that were in his mind suddenly began being forgotten. But, the worries in his heart could not diminish no matter what. Back in Azima, the month of October flew away. During the past month, a series of activities happened. There was the domination of several industries by Jack. Due to the drastic measures that he had taken, the Rose Entertainment Company had already second-rooted, and it was only a matter of time before it was finally acknowledged as the master of the entertainment industry. The several series that had been prepared during the past month were also being released one after the other. And with each release, it hit the market, becoming a trending topic to discuss. Due to the fact that the Rose Entertainment Company had already poached several stars from other entertainment companies, bought them over, and so on, it did not lock people that were going to participate in the production of the films. Together with the funds which the stars that they had newly signed into the company came with, the Rose Entertainment Company became popular as days went by. Additionally, Jack had also gone ahead and introduced a new app that possessed all the incredible services that could be offered by the Rose Entertainment Company. If people wanted to follow the series, songs, movies and so on, then, that app possessed all of them. Of course, with Jack's capabilities in terms of computer mastery, it was not a difficult task for him to handle. So, with the introduction of the app called Roses, the user base of the Rose Entertainment Company also shot up. There were tens of millions of active users every day. And, setting the fact that the Rose Entertainment Company was about to dominate the entire entertainment industry, the amount of income that was being brought in by the company had also shot up. This had led to Jack's account being flooded with billions of dollars after they had been multiplied by the system. With the 100 times income multiplier system, during the past month income report, the amount of money that was present in his account shot past tens of trillions of dollars. The rewards that he had been granted during the last month were as follows. For the 3 companies that he had purchased to enable the grocery department to dominate the entire market, Hunger Killer, PK Foods, and Rise and Shine, he was rewarded with 3 skill slots. With the addition of the 3 skill slots, Jack finally had a total of 5 skill slots, and, with these 5 skill slots, Jack was assured that by the time that he would be heading to the strongholds, he will be assured of several set of incredible skills. After all, the longer the period that he spent without using the skill slots, the better the skills would be in the future. So, Jack was planning to continuously store the skills, unless there was anything important that required him to use them. Other than that, Jack had also purchased several clubs and companies that were involved in fighting, and, with that, he also received 5 chances of improving his strength. That implied that, if he used the chances, he would be able to reach the 7th level of the superhuman level. However, Jack had decided to save all of them. The previous time, the 2 chances that he had saved for 2 months, had enabled him to possess incredible combat power. One that was able to compete against those that had already broken the 3rd genetic lock, even though he was only at the 2nd one. Another reason was that, he was saving the chances for Celine. Currently, she had already reached the 9th level of the normal humans. Since he currently possessed the chances, then, Jack believed that, by the time that the system would be able to influence Celine, then, he would be able to enable her to become a superhuman as well. Of course, Jack knew that, the superhuman level was not the maximum limit that the humans could reach. It was just that was the maximum level that they had encountered so far. Just from the fact that Alicia's protector was actually a superhuman at the 3rd level, that implied that, the one that was superior than him was at a level higher than that. Of course, Jack had planned to completely exploit the system, to ensure that he became invincible with just a few steps. However, he was blocked. Just like how he was prevented from gaining more money from betting, he was also blocked in terms of this sector as well. You have currently reached the maximum number of companies that you can own and gain first income rewards. To be able to gain more, the host is required to upgrade his system authority to the 2nd level. When he saw that, Jack nearly cursed the system. After all, he did not know and neither did he see the reason for the system to try and prevent him from getting invincible. After all, by becoming invincible, he would be able to live a life without much stress, doing some simple work to pass time. But in the end, that was just a pipe dream. But nonetheless, he was satisfied with the 5 levels of power that he had been given, and it was just a matter of time before he finally managed to rank up, while at the same time, enabling Celine to become a superhuman. As for the car industry, it had already been dominated by the future techs. The other car producers could not match the level of technology that the future techs possessed. And for that reason, they had no choice but to finally give up on that industry. But of course, Jack was not willing to cause a lot of unemployment. For that reason, he had actually decided to expand the future techs company. By doing so, he was able to provide several employment opportunities in the country. And by doing that, he was able to shut up all those officials that were trying to use the authority in the government to try and destroy the name of the companies that he owned. And of course, the people with sharp minds had already realized that the Rose Entertainment Company, the Glaze Hotel, GVSL, the grocery department and finally, the future techs all belonged to one person or one group. This was to be expected considering that all these 5 companies had acted at once. Additionally, the remaining 4 other than the Glaze Hotel that had already dominated the entire hotel industry, had actually been working together. In terms of promotions and so on, the one that was in charge of it was the Rose Entertainment Company. As for security, everything was left for GVSL. Transportation was left for the future techs. Finally, for banquets and meals, the grocery department and the Glaze Hotel were the ones that were supposed to deal with that. This matter raised the question in the internet, who was behind these 5 companies? After all, to possess the capabilities of dominating 5 industries at the same time, and possessing that amount of wealth to be able to transform a normal company into a super company that was able to dominate the entire industry of a country was not a joke. Nonetheless, no matter how much they investigated, they were not capable of finding out who it was that was behind the scenes of the 5 companies. But of course, there was always a group that would never give up. A group of journalists had already been formed to try and look deep into the matter, to find out who it was that was behind the improvement of the 5 companies. Of course, these journalists all believed that, as long as they managed to reveal what was being hidden, then, not only would their reputations increase, but they were sure that they would be given promotions in the companies that they were working for. But of course, the motivation only lasted for a while. It was after 2 weeks of research without any results, that finally, there was a group that gave up on the matter. On the contrary, only 3 people remained in the entire group, and decided to continue with their investigation. To them, this was their life. They were not willing to give up, even if this was the last job that they were going to do. They were sure that, with the world that was currently curious, as long as they revealed the information, then, everybody would be praising them. As normal as it could be, there was always a group of people that wanted to use this moment to increase their reputation. So, there were several people that came out and claimed that they were the ones that owned several shares in the group that was involved with the improvement of the 5 companies. Of course, all the people that came out to say this were actually people that possess immense wealth, and were intelligent. Rather than just saying that they were the ones that owned everything, they simply went ahead and said that they owned shares in the group that was involved. For that reason, the reputation of this group of people increased. Even though there were several doubts concerning the matter, with nobody coming out to say that these people were lying, then, it actually became the truth of the matter. With Grace leading the entire grocery department, she was only 1 city away from dominating the entire grocery market in the country. That was something that she promised Jack that she would be able to complete in a matter of 1 week. It was this 1 week that Jack was waiting for. It was this 1 week that everything was supposed to end, and he would be able to upgrade his system authority to the 2nd level. At the same time, Jack felt that it was a pity that he was only given the first income reward of the 3 companies that were involved in the food industry. Otherwise, he was sure that he was going to get a lot more than that. Jack, it is going to be Denali's birthday next week. We have to begin making the preparations for that. Denali has done a lot for us already, Celine said to Jack during a meal in the Glaze Hotel. Jack, it is going to be Denali's birthday next week. We have to begin making the preparations for that. Denali has done a lot for us already, Celine said to Jack during a meal in the Glaze Hotel. I already know about that. But there is only one problem about it. I don't know what I'm supposed to give her. After all, if it is money, I don't think that she likes that. If it is cars, she has the money and she can purchase it if she wants at any time, Jack replied. Celine did not respond to Jack's words. Instead, she began pondering about the matter as well. She had been thinking about what they were supposed to give to Denali, but no matter how much she thought about it, she could not come up with anything that she thought was worth the effort that Denali had been putting in order to enable them succeed. Especially during the past month, due to the speeding up of things, the workload that Denali had to handle had also increased. And of course, even the lazy Jack who didn't want to handle much paperwork was forced to work. After all, since he wanted things to go faster, then, he himself had to lead by example. Due to the fact that he was at the superhuman level, he was able to handle a lot of paperwork without getting tired easily. So, he was able to relieve a lot of burden from Denali, but nonetheless, it was obvious that the burden that Denali was experiencing had also increased a little during the past month. Of course, Jack had tried several times, telling Denali that she was supposed to take a break, but no matter how hard or how many times he tried to convince her, she never agreed to it. She always said that She was doing this out of her own free will. Moreover, she felt that, for Jack to speed up everything, that implied that there was something that had caused him to do so. So, since that was the case, she was willing to help him complete the task that he wanted to do. Well, Jack could not blame Denali about it. After all, her loyalty towards him was at 100% due to the influence of the system. But nonetheless, Jack felt that it was over the top. After all, had it not been for the fact that Denali was strong, and she had been depending on the body strengthening solution, then, her body would have definitely collapsed from the workload. Denali was handling several companies at the same time, and even though she had hired several people that she believed had the capabilities of managing the companies, she still had to overlook everything. What about this? Since you always treat her like a sister, why don't we treat her like we always do with your parents? Jack asked after a moment of silence. Tisk. You're talking like we don't always treat her like a member of our family. At the end of the day, even though it is true that she is working for you, she is doing more than a normal employee would. Celine clicked her tongue as she responded. Of course, Celine did not know the fact that Jack had managed to get Denali due to the influence of the system. Jack was guessing that there was something wrong about the matter, and the appearance of the organization that was said to have trained Denali. But all the same, since he had not revealed anything about the system to Celine, then, he was not going to tell her that he had simply gotten Denali to work for him not as a normal employee, but she had been brought over after the income that he had earned had been multiplied by 100 times. Ayush, the one that was currently working so hard to ensure that the security company, Good Vision Security Company Limited, GVSL, managed to dominate the entire security industry, was previously Austin's slave. And due to the betting, he was able to acquire everything that belonged to Austin, and Ayush was amongst them. Consequently, since he was counted as an income, the system was able to multiply him by 100 times, and Jack was given Denali. About Austin, you can refer this to Chapter 87, The Power of the System. I know. It is just that. What I'm trying to imply is that we are going to treat her way better than before. If there is an opportunity, then I'm going to grant her to ensure that she also gets stronger than she currently is. Jack explained himself. Anyway, that is something that can happen in the future. So, what do you think about the present that we are supposed to prepare for Denali? You can't be trying to say that you will not be giving her any present during her birthday, simply because you are planning to give her in the future, right? Celine asked with squinted eyes. Helpless, Jack only raised his hands in the air as he said, you should know that it is not that I don't want to give her anything. It is just that I can't find anything suitable as a present for a person like her. If it's jewelry, I'm pretty sure that she can purchase any. After thinking for a while, Celine suddenly thought of an idea. Even though she felt a little reluctant, she looked at Jack and asked, what if we decide to give her Bella as a reward? I'm pretty sure that Denali will be happy about it, right? The moment that Celine said those words, Jack's eyes also lit up. It was only at this moment that he was suddenly reminded of the fact that he had actually received not only the 2 horses, Bella and Shadow, but also, there were still other horses that he had been completely ignoring. During the time that he had purchased a horse racing track, he had sold it once again, and he received 5 horses as a reward from the system. During that time, he only brought over Shadow and Bella. Bella was a mare with white coat, representing pureness, while Shadow was a stallion that had a dark coat, representing majesty. As for the remaining 3, Jack had completely forgotten about them after he came back. Well, he was not to be blamed though. After all, he had been dealing with the matter of Celine being controlled by someone else, trying to ensure that the companies managed to dominate the industries that they were in, and yet another matter that concerned his investigation about his mother. All the same, Jack had been so busy that, during the past month, other than during the time that the month had begun, he had reduced the interaction between him and Celine. But nonetheless, Celine also understood the situation, and she also realized that it was not going to take a long time before Jack managed to achieve his goal. For that reason, she decided to give Jack a chance to do what he wanted to do. Additionally, from time to time, she would help with the management. This way, she would be able to help Jack in achieving his goal faster, so that the 2 of them could spend more time together. What is it? Do you perhaps think that it is better to give Bella to Denali? After all, I don't think that we have any other thing that is valuable that we can give to Denali. Even though it is true that Bella is not that much expensive, but Bella is unique. I don't think that there is any horse that we can find which can be compared to Bella, Celine said as she looked at Jack. Jack looked at Celine, and from her eyes, he could tell that she was hesitating a little. After all, during the past month, Celine had been spending a lot of time together with Bella, and a bond had already been formed. Fact, this bond was formed during the first time that the two of them met. So, it was a difficult decision that Celine had decided to make to offer Bella to Denali. There's no need for you to do that. Jack shook his head in response. What do you mean by that? Don't tell me that you want to give a stallion to Denali. You know, that horse of yours is quite arrogant and proud as well. I'm pretty sure that he will not agree to this. At least my Bella can understand, Celine said with a frown on her face. You misunderstood me. I did not try to imply that. Instead, I was just trying to say that I have another horse that I can give to Denali. Just like the ones that we possess, the one that I want to give to Denali is also incredible. It is just that I forgot about them. There are 3 of them that are currently being taken care of in the majestic and swift horse racing tracks, Jack responded. Celine's eyes widened in surprise. She did not expect that other than Bella and Shadow, there were actually other horses that were as unique as them. Jack, do you perhaps have a source of these horses? You know, I have been trying to look for any horse that can compare to Bella, but no matter how much I searched, I have not managed to find any that closes in terms of appearance or abilities. Celine asked as she looked at Jack expectantly. Of course not. The 5 horses were unique. Bella and Shadow were amongst the 5. You know, it is just that, during this past month, I had been planning to give the 3 horses to other people, but I was busy that I even forgot about them, Jack explained. Seriously, you forgot? Are you trying to tell me that if Bella was amongst them, then you would have also forgotten about her? How can you do that? Celine looked at Jack incredulously as she asked. Seriously, you forgot? Are you trying to tell me that if Bella was amongst them, then you would have also forgotten about her? How can you do that? Celine looked at Jack incredulously as she asked. Hey, you cannot blame me like that. You know, I am not an enthusiast when it comes to horse racing. So, during the time that I was occupied with other things, I didn't even think about that fact, Jack replied innocently. Celine looked at Jack, and in the end, she could only shake her head and sigh. At the end of the day, she knew how busy Jack was, so she could not blame him. But, still, there was something else that she was curious about. Jack, why does it seem that you are so infatuated with making sure that you dominate the entire industry of the 5 companies? Don't tell me that you are looking for domination like you said before, Celine asked curiously. I cannot refuse the fact that I really want domination, and that is the reason as to why I am trying to make sure that I dominate the 5 industries. But other than that, I still have another aim, Jack replied honestly. What is it? Can you stop putting me in suspense? Celine asked frustratedly. Okay, another honest response from me will be that the reason as to why I am trying so hard to make sure that I dominate the 5 industries is simply because I want to ensure your safety, Jack replied, even though he knew that, although this was an honest response, it was not the complete truth about the matter. Like how? Are you trying to say that you are trying to protect me by dominating the entire market, so that you can ensure that nobody will be able to harass me whenever I go to buy something or do something? Celine asked in confusion. You can say that, it is something like that, but still, it is more than just that. I have bigger plans, Jack responded. Of course, there was no way that he was going to tell her that. The reason behind all of this was simply because, initially, it was a condition that he was required to fulfill. But now, it was something that he had to fulfill. By fulfilling the conditions, he will be able to ensure Celine's security. More than that, he will be able to utilize the 5 chances that he had been given by the system, to ensure that Celine became a superhuman as well. But of course, something like this could only be revealed later on after he had succeeded. He was not sure if Celine was going to believe him, but of course, he was never going to mention a thing about the system. Instead, he had already formed something, a lie or whatever one would think of, that he was preparing to tell Celine about. Noticing that Jack was not willing to tell her about the matter, Celine decided to forget about it. But at the same time, she felt a sense of loss in her heart. It seemed that Jack was still hiding something from her. I guess I would have to do more in order to gain his trust. Otherwise, I don't know what will be the need of the 2 of us getting married, if we keep on keeping secrets from each other, Celine thought to herself. Of course, Jack was able to notice the change in Celine's expression. Ever since he had become a superhuman, that was something that he was able to easily observe. Nonetheless, even though he knew that Celine was quite disappointed, still, he did not say anything. He was preparing to reveal to her during the time that they were going to go to the stronghold. At that time, he would open up, and tell her everything that needed to be known. After the meal, Jack and Celine decided to go to the majestic and swift horse racing tracks. Of course, Jack had already discarded aside the Bugatti Veyron, and was currently driving the new model that had been introduced into the market by his future techs. The name that had been given to the car was FT001. Of course, this was a unique car that had been designed by Jack himself, and, other than him, there was nobody else that owned it. This car had been made out of the research that Jack had done after researching on the car that he had been given by the system. So, even though he had not completely analyzed everything about that car, still, he was able to deduce a lot of things that enabled him to create this car. Even though it did not stand out in terms of appearance, that was simply because Jack had decided to make it look ordinary. This was to stop it from attracting much attention towards them. Additionally, the appearance of the car could change from time to time, in terms of paint and so on. This was also an advancement that had been added to this car due to the research that Jack had done, an ability that was possessed on the improved version of the car that had been given to him by the system as a reward. As for the car that he had been given by the system, Jack had decided to keep it aside for now. Since he had not completed his research, he was not willing to risk it getting destroyed. He did not possess the skills of repairing it, and he was not willing to waste a skill slot just to learn a skill like that. So, it was going to remain in the garage, waiting until he was done with his research. On the way there, they informed Denali that she was supposed to go there, but surprisingly, it seemed that she was having a business there, and she was actually at the majestic and swift horse racing tracks. When they arrived at the majestic and swift horse racing tracks, Jack and Celine found that Denali was waiting for them at the entrance. After making sure that they had arrived, she followed them inside her car that was also another model from future techs, to the parking lot. "Jack, Celine, how are you guys?" Denali greeted them the moment that they alighted from the car in the parking lot. Due to the improvement of the relationship between them, finally, Jack had managed to convince Denali not to call him boss or master anymore, instead, to just call him by his name. Of course, Denali was reluctant at first. However, she was convinced by Celine, and Jack had said that, if she no longer wanted to work for him, then, she could continue calling him boss or master. Denali had no choice but to change the way that she addressed both Jack and Celine. At the end of the day, she was not willing to lose the job that she was doing. Even though it seemed a lot, to say the truth, she was enjoying it a lot. She had spent a lot of time in the shadow organization, being trained, and, during that time, everyone was strict on her. But now, she was working, and her boss was actually so lenient to her. Moreover, from time to time, she would be together with Celine, working and chatting. She was enjoying her life here. "We are just doing fine. There's something that we wanted your assistance with," Celine said. During the time that they were traveling towards the majestic and swift horse racing tracks, they had already discussed on how they were going to handle the matter. "What could that be?" Denali asked curiously as she followed Jack and Celine, as they headed towards a certain part of the majestic and swift horse racing tracks. "Just come with us. You will know when you get there," Celine responded. Denali did not say anything else, and accompanied the two of them. The piece of land that was being owned by the majestic and swift horse racing tracks was quite big, so, they had to walk for about 30 minutes before finally arriving at their destination. Unlike the normal horse stables, the area that they had arrived in was like another world completely. Even though it was already late autumn, the area had been maintained well, and the grass was even greener than the other areas. Additionally, the number of workers that were present in this part of the horse racing track's ground was quite large as well. And, in the middle of the field, the three could see that there were 3 horses present. One of them was having a red coat, another one with black coat, and another one with a mixture of black and white. These were the 3 remaining horses that Jack had been given by the system. When the horses saw Jack, they all neighed and rushed over. Of course, this immediately alarmed the workers that were supposed to take care of them. It was also during this moment that they suddenly realized that, without them knowing, there were actually 3 people that had appeared here. Of course, due to the fact that the horses were running towards them, some of them completely misunderstood that perhaps Jack and his group had somehow offended the horses. The one that was closer suddenly shouted at Jack and said, "You guys are not supposed to be here. This is a restricted area. If you didn't read the sign that was placed some distance there, then, you have to go back there and make sure that you read it. Get out of here as soon as possible before you get implicated by the law. You guys are not supposed to be here. This is a restricted area. If you didn't read the sign that was placed some distance there, then, you have to go back there and make sure that you read it. Get out of here as soon as possible before you get implicated by the law." The man shouted as he approached Jack and the group hurriedly. He wanted to try and prevent the horses from attacking them. They knew the horses all too well. The intelligence of the horses was actually high, and, in case they did something that displeased them, they always took action against them. Of course, there was even one of them that had been beaten until he was taken to the hospital simply because he had been trying to harass the horse. Well, by talking about harassment, it was just that guy was simply trying to use the chance that they were together with the horses, so that he could ride them. He knew that since these horses were being given special treatment, that implied that they were special. So, he wanted to do something that he was going to be capable of bragging in front of others. So, by testing how it felt to ride this kind of horse, he thought that it was going to be a big achievement. But in the end, the only achievement that he got was by being admitted in the hospital with some severe injuries. As for the others, if they delayed the meals, then, the horses would begin making a ruckus. This had been causing a headache to those that were in charge of taking care of the horses. Even though it was true that they were being paid quite well, but the job itself was quite hectic unless they formed a good relationship with the horses. This was something that they only realized recently, and so, they tried to make sure that they pleased the horses. Even though this fact was kind of strange, still, they didn't care. As long as the horses behaved well, then, they would not have to do a lot of work. However, the amount of income that they were going to receive at the end of the month was never going to reduce. But, as he stood in front of the horses, the horse with the red coat simply used its head to shove the man aside. Even though the man tried to resist, he found himself completely helpless against the horse. As he fell onto the ground, he watched helplessly as the horses approached Jack's group. Then, he was completely dumbfounded by what happened next. The moment that the horses arrived in front of Jack, they did not attack. Instead, they began rubbing him with their heads. This was exactly a behavior of a pet. They would always be looking for their master's affection, more so through patting. There was yet another reason at why the man had been so dumbfounded. It was just that, he knew that these horses were actually proud, and would not allow just anyone to touch them. Ever since they had been brought over, only 2 people had managed to touch them. As for the rest, they were not allowed, otherwise they would be beaten up. But now, like little children that had missed their parents, the 3 horses that were always proud, were actually begging for attention from Jack. Of course, Jack was not surprised by the actions of the 3 horses. After all, they were completely loyal to him, as they had been granted to him by the system. He patted them one after the other. After that, he observed the 3 of them, and, for a moment, he could swear that he had seen some kind of resentment within the eyes of the 3 horses. Of course, Jack understood the reason of the resentment. It was just that, the 3 horses had been abandoned by Jack for over a month, and it was only now that he was coming to look after them. Celine of course could not hold it back and went ahead and began touching the horses as well. The horses were kind of beautiful, and she could not resist the term that they gave, even though she felt that their charm was kind of lacking as compared to the one that Bella was giving. Denali was also interested. She went ahead and looked at the horse that had a red coat. It seemed that she was completely attracted to this horse, so it was the only one that she was paying much attention to. Of course, the only reason as to why Denali and Celine could touch the horses was simply because they were together with Jack. The relationship that they shared with Jack was not shallow, so the horses did not find them repulsive. Of course, this came as a surprise to the man who had been trying to chase away Jack and his group. He had never expected that this group was actually capable of handling the horses. And in fact, it seemed that the horses were familiar with them, and that was why they had allowed them to touch their coat. Out of the 3 horses, Jack found out that there was 1 stallion and 2 mares. The one with the red coat and the one with a mixture of black and white were all mares. As for the one with the black coat completely, it was a stallion. After some time, Jack looked at the 3 horses and said, "You guys can stay here for a little while longer. Don't worry, I will not forget about you guys. You will be out of here sooner than you think." Nay. The 3 horses neighed as if to express their dissatisfaction. After all, by staying here, they did not get involved in many activities. Other than the fact that they were playing with each other, eating and sleeping was all they could do. Celine looked at them, and thought that they were pitiful. Subconsciously, she said, "It is a pity that you guys are actually owned by a person who is usually forgetful. Anyway, don't care about him. You can come with me and I will take care of you." Neigh. The horses released an excited neigh. Due to the fact that these horses possessed the intelligence of an 8-year-old child, of course, they could somehow understand what Celine had said. Even though it was true that they could not completely understand the human tongue, but at least, they understood some pieces of them. And, they were very good at reading the mood. Of course, the 3 horses could not be simply taken out of here just because Jack had come over. They had to make enough preparations for them to be taken out. Moreover, Jack was planning to give one of the horses to Denali as a present. Of course, he had already noticed what horse he was going to give her. After making some random excuses, Jack and Celine found a way out, without Denali noticing anything. And after they left, Jack made arrangements for the red horse to be prepared. This was the horse that Jack had noticed that Denali was kind of fond of. Even though they had just met, even the horse itself liked Denali, and it paid more attention to her than it paid even to him. Of course, that did not come as a surprise to him. After all, currently, Bella would always listen to Celine's commands, rather than Jack's. However, that was unless Jack decided to give a command that the horses could not resist. Devon's stronghold, a month had already gone by, and the results of the investigation that had been carried out had already returned. Ruth was seated inside her house, looking at the report that had been prepared for her. Of course, it was handwritten, as she was not willing to risk anybody hacking into the devices that he used to steal the information. The more information she read, the more dissatisfied her expression became. After all, after this long period of research, the results that had returned to her were not satisfactory at all. In fact, they had tried investigating about Jack, but the result that they had found was that Jack was actually a member of a family in Crystal City. He was treated badly, and during the years that he had been growing up, he had always been alone. That was until he came to be together with the girl that he was currently engaged to, and the two of them grew up together. As for his mother, from the information, it seemed that she had passed away. As for the father, currently, he was living a difficult life due to what he had done to Jack. It was not only him, but the entire Alfonso household had been reduced into a group of beggars. It was difficult for them to even get hold of a job to do. Even though it was true that she had received information about Jack, still, she did not receive any information that she wanted. From her impression, she knew that a person of Jack's caliber was not someone that could be judged by this piece of information that had been given. At the end of the day, Jack was actually a superhuman. And since that was the case, then, that implied that this ordinary background that had been given was actually simply created, and it was not the real one. For Jack to be able to become a superhuman, there was no way that he was going to depend on an outside background. A background that was out of the stronghold. Mom, have you already completed the investigation? I am getting impatient already, Alicia said to her mother as she approached her.